Hey there hunters, welcome back to the Gunners Guild. We're back with more Remnant 2 videos since it's pretty much the only thing driving me away from Baldur's Gate right now. So we're going to continue on with build videos as there are an infinite amount of builds to cover, though some I'm still waiting for patches for. But as you can expect from the video title and whatnot, today we're going to talk about an engineer build, which I know I'm kind of late to the party on this one, but let's just dive into this anyways. The build is going to be focusing on maximum heavy carry usage, since it is a unique type of weapon exclusive to the engineer. You can build more around the turret mode if you'd like, and that's entirely viable, but that's a completely different build because that counts as a summon and there's a lot of shenanigans you can do with that. But today we're going to be discussing the heavy carry option, which is solid on its own and can dish out some amazing bursts of damage. And I mean, I say burst, but it's like 20 seconds, it's a long burst. And overall, the DPS can rival some of the best non-bug abusing builds out there. So while it may have some issues which we will discuss, Engineer alone holds solid ground against everything Remnant 2 can throw at it. Anyway, today's Engineer build is just Engineer. So of course our prime archetype is going to be the Engineer, because honestly you kind of need overclock, because without it, I don't really think heavy carry guns are all that great. But also, the other piece of the build that we're going to be revolving around is the relic perk, because honestly it's the best, if not one of the best relic perks in the game. Invader definitely is up there too. But this lets us spam relic charges to restore our heavy carry ammo while it is active as a turret or dismissed, though you do get 30% of its ammo back if it's not currently active. And this is what we're going to be building around, heavy carry and relic spam to maintain it. I'm going to be opting for the Vulcan heavy carry weapon because I'm not a huge fan of the other two personally, and Vulcan just kind of shreds. Now for the second archetype, we really don't have any other options besides to use the handler, because you can't use other skills while you're heavy carrying, something I hope gets added in a later patch, but the dog is at least autonomous. But also, the handler archetype does have a lot of other benefits for us. First being that of course its damage perk grants skill damage, and a little bit of range damage to help us if we're caught without our gun active. Its utility perk also increases our movement speed, which is very nice because the heavy carry is slower by default, and its relic perk buffs our dog for increased damage and damage resistance, and since we're using our relics often, it's pretty synergistic. Now I know I've crapped all over the handler and summoner builds before, but now that we've had some extra patches in that increase their HP, they feel much better to use, so the dog itself is not dead weight anymore. For zone clearing, the dog takes aggro very well and can help direct you to enemies since it's really easy to get tunnel visioned while you're ADSing your minigun and kind of keeping it ramped up. Seriously, he is a lifesaver. And while the damage on the dog isn't anything to write home about, he does apply bleed, which does let us take advantage of the abrasive whetstone, and since we're going to be using the heavy carry, we really don't have time to swap to grenades or twisted rounds all that often, so the dog is great at keeping the amulet active for us. That being said, the dog is still kinda dead weight on a lot of boss fights, as the bosses are often just away from the dog's reach, and the dog AI also has some other issues with lower profile enemies such as tumbleweeds and bloats at times. So like, he's still not super reliable, but since he doesn't die on Apocalypse anymore, I can kinda live with it. Speaking of the dog though, I am using the attack dog for the 20% increased damage howl it has, when I remember to use it at least. But also don't discount the tank dog. He can pull aggro from bosses in pretty much every elite, and does give you plenty of free space to get in some more damage. And since we're also buffing our dog with our relics, and that he can live really long now, like the tank dog can put in a lot of work. So you can see how these two archetypes kind of play together very well. It's very nice for Apocalypse. The dog can take pressure off the player and does give you plenty of time to mow down enemies, but also in a pinch, you can just drop your turret and run for cover and let both of them deal with trash enemies. And as an extra bonus, if you're getting hit on Apocalypse, relics are a double win because you're not only healing yourself, but you're buffing your dog and getting ammo back for your turret as well. And in co-op, you can generate ammo for your team, and since you have kinship, you don't really have to worry about friendly fire at all, so I mean, it's just pretty comfy in general. So handler's just a really good pair here. So of course though, pure engineer is kind of a niche style. You don't have to only use the heavy carry. In fact, I would recommend against it, but you can, and if you can, then I'm gonna. And that's kind of the point of this build. But because it's not exactly an ideal playstyle and not really min-maxy, it's not gonna be the best thing around. Heavy carry engineer works great on elites and most bosses, but it's still not the best for trash clear, as you do have to constantly drop your ramp up time and spin it back up with your little minigun every time you let go of ADS. Plus, the damage without overclock is kind of only okay, so it's not like it kills faster than other ranged weapons, especially on trash, but trust me, you'll be able to fly through everything without too much of an issue. Like here for example on a target dummy, I'm using grenades because I can't use bleed or Akari, but I can still get like 3k DPS without overclock, and that's respectable. I mean, sure, that's weak spot only hits, but still, even if you cut out like a third of those hits, you're still going to be doing over 2k DPS, which is plenty to run through Apocalypse trash. And where Engineer really shines is of course with overclock, where you basically get double your DPS, letting you ramp up to like 6k DPS, which is on par with Hugs builds. Trust me, Engineer is definitely strong. There's just a couple issues here and there that make it a little clunky. And one of the issues that Engineer has, well not really, but it will soon, is with the Prime perk High Tech. Currently it gets cooldown reduction with skill cooldown stuff, so you can kind of stack that and reduce the cooldown to like 20 seconds, which is not intended, because no other archetype can do that, even Handler, whose Prime is also attached to their skill. And since skill duration also doesn't affect High Tech, it's clearly a small bug here. So when that inevitably gets fixed, Engineer will be slightly worse. And so because of this, the only skill cooldown stuff I have right now is the Expertise trait and a Relic Fragment, because there's really nothing else that we can really put in to help us. But also because I just didn't want to invest in more skill cooldown, knowing that that fix was coming. So the build will still perform just fine, like without a little bit of cooldown reduction in the future. Plus, I mean, we may get other ways to scale our heavy carries such as fire rate and spread reduction, so who knows, it could be better later. But right now, it's getting a little bit more cooldown reduction than it should be. And wow, I haven't even talked about the gear yet, shame on me. So this is the basics of the build. You can look at this, go ahead and screen cap that, and we can kind of discuss the specifics. So the armor is up to you. Feel free to run ultra heavy armor for the extra damage reduction, as you will get the same engineer hop regardless of the weight as long as your heavy carry's out. I personally don't like it because when I drop the heavy carry weapon, I don't want to accidentally flop, but if you pay attention to it, you'll be fine. For the relic, I'm using the Lifeless Heart for the double relic charges, as we're going to be spamming these quite a bit. You can use any other relic if you want those extra added benefits, because I don't think I ever ran through all 20 of these in a zone, but I mean, why risk it, right? For the relic fragments, I'm using weak spot damage, since that does work with heavy carry, as well as skill damage and the skill cooldown fragment. Once the skill cooldown stuff stops working, I'm either going to move to relic use speed, or if we can scale it with fire rate, then fire rate for sure. Now the trinkets are going to be exactly what you'd expect, because it's literally the same as everything that can scale with crit. We're going to be running Abrasive Whetstone, Xania's Malice, and Probability Cord, and Akari Warband. And for the last slot, I'm using Burden the Destroyer because it provides us with 15% increased damage, and the range reduction doesn't really matter to us because we're not using firearms. Now again, I'm not using skill cooldown trinkets because we're supposed to recover our heavy carry ammo off of our relic usage, and I don't want to invest in that right now. And also skill duration doesn't do anything for us except the dog howl duration, but I'd rather just get 15% more damage all the time. Other things like the Sapphire Dreamstone and the Devoured Loop do not affect the heavy carry, so we cannot fish for crits to refresh our ammo, unfortunately. Now you can run the Hyperconductor to get double ammo for your heavy carry, so you can get 300 rounds. But because of the whole skill cooldown bug, Hyperconductor is also going to be doubling the cooldown on your overclock, which is something we want to avoid, so it's not worth it for us right now. But once it gets fixed, that'll probably be a good option as well. Now for your actual weapons, you do want a backup set of pretty much anything you're comfortable with, just because, you know, sometimes you'll have to drop a turret and then shoot, or drop your weapon entirely to, you know, use relics and you might be in a pinch. Though make sure that if you are running Burden of the Warlord, pick something with longer range, since you're going to be losing a good part of that. I always opt for something like Twisted Wounds Mutator and Song of Earfur just for trash packs if I need it, because being able to apply bleed just in case my dog can't reach or is occupied will still let me use my amulet, and Song of Earfur also just slows everything down, which is really nice. Now for the traits, I want to make a special note on some things, because you can see them in the inventory menu, but I want to talk about a few of the traits. Now obviously movement speed's huge. I always say get swiftness and footwork, but this is doubly important for a heavy carry because it becomes very mobile, and honestly it's faster than sprinting once you have all these traits on, so that's kind of important. But also remember, you do want Flash Caster to increase the speed at which you can bring out and dismiss your minigun. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like the skill speed helps the dog howl, because I mean the dog's gonna howl earlier, but you still have the same finger snap animation which locks you into that, so honestly you're not seeing much of a benefit there. And also, we are using the Glutton trait just because we want the increased relic use speed so you can spam those relics faster if you need it. But that's basically the whole engineer build. It still crushes all of Apocalypse. There's not a whole lot of bad things about it. It's just, it can be a little iffy on some trash clear, but I've always been a huge fan of the engineer, and it's got a lot of unique features, and it's definitely powerful. Trust me, like I said, it can hold its own against Hugs. But definitely give it a try if you haven't had much of a chance to play Engineer yet. That's going to be all for me though, so thank you all for watching, and thank you to my Patreon members, much appreciated. If anyone has questions or wants to talk shop about Remnant or gaming in general, feel free to join my Discord in the description below. But yeah, peace and good luck out there, hunters.